every time that we have Ford over, it's just like very exciting and very close to my heart. I don't know how many of you know, but Ford was one of the first companies that gave Gravity Sketch a chance. So it's always kind of like, yeah, an amazing moment to have them here. This session is called the Shaping Ford's 3D Future, Tools and Mindsets for Design Evolution. And so, they will discuss the new approaches and tools being used in design, creation, and collaboration, from workflows to mindset. They'll give insight into how they're preparing for the future of design. And so, let's first watch a video, and then after that, I'll be coming back.
So we use sponsored projects to evaluate students for potential hiring, both interns and full-time. I think it's important that they get a picture and a sort of a window into how we work at Ford. And to a certain extent, I think it's great that we'll be able to see what they come up with, right, and share it with everybody else in Ford Design.
One of the things we're trying to do at CCS is make it more seamless for our students to go on to careers. And so the more we can collaborate with companies like Gravity Sketch and Ford, the more seamless their experience is. And so as they get out in the larger world, they're much more prepared to work in a design setting for a company like Ford in a way that in the past they weren't able to do that.
So this is a senior transportation design studio. We're doing something unique with this one where it's interior and exterior students who are going to be teaming up in teams of 2. And we'll be leveraging all the best aspects of Gravity Sketch to work together collaboratively. I'm most excited to see the differing skill levels and how quickly they can adapt to a new tool. As Gravity Sketch has matured and grown as a piece of software, it's only been more and more amazing for us to use it at Ford. And so that's why I think we're really excited to work with Gravity Sketch Education, because this is a direct input, right, into combining the partnerships that we have with CCS and with Gravity Sketch.
Through this sponsorship with Gravity Sketch and Ford, they're getting kind of best of both worlds, the latest rapidly advancing technology and insights and strategic mentorship from professionals in the industry.
A lot of things excite me about this. I think it's the first time in a while we've done a project where we have 2 sponsors working hand in hand with the students, and I think that's going to be really exciting for the students. But also I think just bringing in this technology and enabling the students in this new way to showcase their ideas and concepts.
With Gravity Sketch and Ford teaming up, there's been a lot of focus on kind of breaking the norm and allowing ourselves to go crazy as designers using the tools that enable us to do so.
I think the openness of the brief is really exciting. The design development process of rapid iteration just goes so much faster, as I've found with using Gravity Sketch.
Being able to work with the Gravity Sketch team and Ford as well, it's a really cool thing. Just the fact that you can take your 3D ideas that are in your head and then just instantly sketch them and then model it. It's so easy to do that, and yeah, I think that'll be a cool thing for my workflow.
I'm very excited to learn more about Gravity Sketch and also learn more about myself as a designer and how I can innovate my own workflow to help myself become a better designer.
It's been an awesome ride. 15 weeks that have kind of culminated to this moment.
I'm really happy with the way that it came out.
My designs turn out better for it.
An amazing semester and a lot of great work by all the teams. The journey is really compelling because we came in with a set of expectations. We kind of gave them some ground rules. I wanted the brief to be light, and I really think they did a great job running with it, really demonstrating the power and collaborative nature of the tool. Really happy with the results. All of them, in true student fashion, pulled it together in the end. And I think really surprised everybody with their amazing work.
I'm fairly new to Gravity Sketch. I've been in it a few times. What I'm looking forward to seeing is where this actually goes, because we have ways of doing things, and sometimes when a process gets injected into the system, it takes it and you see things from a different angle. And where that leads, I'm really curious. Because there's power in that.
I've been in vehicle studios before this, but this is my first one with like one of the big automotive manufacturers. This semester I learned 3 programs in one semester. It was a lot of learning, but it made me a better designer, and my designs turn out better for it, for sure.
Learning a new tool that I can implement into my workflow, being able to network with Ford and also Gravity Sketch has just been an amazing experience.
What I love about the Ford Gravity Sketch studio, and what I like about having the studio being spearheaded by someone who's as forward thinking as Mike, it really gave us a license to treat it and think about it in the way that I think it would be in the industry too.
I had no experience in Gravity Sketch at all coming into this. When I picked up my headset for the first time on week 1, that was the first time that I had opened the app. So it's pretty awesome to see how far that me and everybody else in the studio has come in terms of using this platform, and I can absolutely see the vision in terms of seeing Gravity Sketch being used a lot more in my workflow.
I'm always someone who's tool agnostic, I would say, but I do think that Gravity Sketch tends to be the right tool for me.
Thanks to the folks who let us use this really progressive and modern space here at the Ford Experience Center. Really gives my management a taste, right, of kind of where the future's going. And I think the students, it's important that they understand if they come to Ford that these are going to be experiences that they have. It was mission accomplished in the sense that we gave them a taste and they really nailed it.
All right, so I would love to welcome to the stage Michael Smith, Russell Sims, and Cedric Lee for this conversation. Hey guys, thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and so I would love to first hear a little bit about yourselves. Can you introduce yourselves? Michael, we can start with you.
All right, I guess as the old man in this room here, Michael Smith. I'm the R&D manager for Studio 2000X here at Ford Design. It's a studio that really, when I try to explain what I do these days, I tell them about carbon fiber and how carbon fiber is a very strong material, but it needs resin to glue it together and make it that strong material. And that's kind of what Studio 2000X fundamentally is going after, right? We try to glue together lots of different functions and activities within all the design studios around the globe. And so my particular task is making sure that all the designers in the studios have the coolest new toys to play with. And I think we'll talk about some of those today.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm a CCS grad, did industrial design, came to Ford about 14 years ago doing design digital modeling. And about 4 years ago, I got put on this awesome adventure I'm on now, which is the head of digital design at Ford. So it means a lot of things, but the cool parts of my job is I get to recruit, I get to work with new technologies, I get to inspire different workflows and build a team around us like Cedric over here to make the future happen with all these different things. So, yeah.
And hi, everyone. Cedric here. I'm a recent grad from the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. I got onboarded onto Ford under Russell's team probably late February. So moved on over from California, and here I am in Detroit. And my initial roles here, I'm hired as a design digital modeler, so I assist designers on, kind of creating their sketches and bring it into, somewhat of a reality, whether it be through digital reviews and VR, XR reviews, or even bringing it to digital prototyping in the early stages. It's been a fun journey, and really excited to talk about how these new workflows have helped not only me learn the process at a much faster rate, but also help advance some of the design directions that we've been working on.
Cool. Well, and so, Michael, we go a long way back when you were, basically the first person to believe in Gravity Sketch at Ford and just decided to give it a chance. And so Gravity Sketch has evolved quite a bit, but also your vision and Ford's vision and where this technology is actually taking the workflow within the design studios at Ford. So, it would be great to hear, and we've spoken about this, to hear a little bit more about how you're thinking about it. And you spoke about timelines. So it would be great to come dive a little bit deeper into that to get us all kind of grounded where we are.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, it would be easy to say it was 8 years ago today that I reached out. I don't know if that's the exact date, but it's definitely 8 years ago that I reached out to Shay, having seen that famous YouTube video. And so, honestly, I think the theme for Gravity Sketch and for a lot of the work that I do these days with R&D is this question. This is interesting, but is it useful? And honestly, the timelines aspect of that is really kind of mental, right? When you think about it, if I'd have known that it was going to take 8 years to get to where we are, it might have seemed daunting. Fortunately, I just have this compulsion or this drive to keep going forward. And so where we are today is an amazing spot, and also we're not done. So there's always work to be done to keep pushing forward. And so with every tool that comes in the door, the question is, okay, that's really interesting, but is it useful? And I think Gravity Sketch, the timeline of it is really written across the history of our times, right? So really quickly, to give a summary, we started out with an on-prem version, which on-premises means the server was at Ford, and we could grow as rapidly as we wanted to, as long as we kept below the max concurrent users cap. And then COVID happened, and that changed. It was an inflection point in terms of how teams worked together because we had to go remote. That served really well when the cloud version of Gravity Sketch came out, and we pivoted to that. And then it became not a question of how many, the sort of how many people could you get in. It was how many seats could we get. And so that was an interesting time. And it's sort of May You Live in Interesting Times has been constant through this whole thing. And now our latest push is to go global and untethered with Meta headsets. And that's also been an interesting timeline as well. And I say timeline because we've had to fight with lots of different groups, and each time we've found somebody to ally with to get around a certain hurdle, be it IT or security or technology or whatever.
Yeah. So what gave Ford the conviction to keep going, like to invest in this technology and change the work?
The first one was just trying to get past the awareness gap, right? So when it was Murray Callum as the VP, bringing it to his attention was the first thing, and then everything beyond that has been bringing awareness to more and more people. I think we've reached a really amazing point now because the momentum is sort of it's building on itself, and it's less of me going around yelling as loud as I can, you got to try this, to people coming up to us and say, I want to try this, right? Or I need to get this in my tool set. And so, in that timeline aspect, it's been a slow burn, but it's definitely on an accelerated curve, which is great, and really exciting to be at.
Yeah, and so this kind of like adopting this new way of working or thinking about design unleash an entire new way of thinking about the design process, right? And so you had to kind of like rewire everyone's brains into understanding what is this new process going to be like. And Russell and Cedric, that's a big part of the work that you're doing right now, because 3D has always been important in the design process, but the question is, or like the thing that changes, like when or how. And you're probably seeing a lot of things that were not happening before that are happening right now. And so it would be great to hear from you guys, some of the experiences that you've been going through that have made you understand how, you're like almost flipping the process on its head.
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. So I'm going to kind of start not too many years ago. I'd say 4 years ago, we were an alias-based digital modeling team and was very structured. And we had basically a movement with Mike and myself and some other a bunch of other people that said, "Hey, We want to find the most talented people with the best design modeling skills. We want to give them the freedom to explore what they love, bring their passions to us, and see how we can make a better process at Ford. So like people like Cedric, we found people like that who excelled in these different areas in different modeling programs and started wrapping that all together. Well, at the same time, we became a much more experiential based company. And one thing about experiences is you want to be able to test and move through things as fast as possible at the lowest cost possible to see what's good for the consumer or bad for the consumer, because our end goal is to make the best, most exciting products for the world, right? To really better people's lives. So this digital world has given us a lot of those opportunities where we can explore how does interior stuff feel? How does this exterior stuff feel in VR? And there's been good enablers, right? Like we've been able to prove to management, we've been able to bring in people who have grown up in this digital world, like Cedric, that are very comfortable in the headsets and very comfortable doing that dance. So we've had a lot of enablers that have got us there. Now, how that's transitioned into products is Bronco Sport refresh that just came out is a really good example of something that was very, very digitally led. Now, clay is incredibly important for sculptural things, but on the Bronco Sport, we did an MCA, and we basically did the whole thing digital without ever making physicals, because we were able to live in that 3D world. We were able to develop new products and processes like the tie down hooks and all that stuff. So getting faster to those experiences, getting people to buy in that this 3D virtual world is real. We can collaborate in it. I can work with somebody in China. I can work with somebody in California. We can all be in the same room together, because there's no replacement for collaboration, for doing ideas and stuff like that. It's been a really cool experience. And we've had the freedom here to grab our passions and drive that experience and really make a better process than what we've ever done before. And like I said, Cedric's a big part of that whole thing as well. So,
yeah, I mean, the big benefit I find in using software such as this in, integrating that into our workflows is I get to have real-time response, feedback, and reactions to whatever products that we're developing within the team. For example, like, let's say a designer wants to give me some changes on the spot. They can come over to me and show me the sketches then and there, but it's a different story when they're able to go in there and physically see how those surfaces are reacting, like to so real world situation where we bring into XR, or even just having them in that VR environment. They can then either drop those lines for me within that environment, or they can actually sculpt those surfaces alongside with me. And, we can make those changes then and there without so much loss of translation through just words and, 2D representations of what their initial thought process is. And I think it's also a huge benefit to integrating more of these new workflows, in that you're able to streamline the process from initial ideations from your head to 2D to actual physical properties, where with stuff like this, we can go from, hey, this is what the sketch could kind of look like floating in the virtual space. We can so-and-so walk around it, kind of hold it in that virtual room, and then we can have that product, come to reality without too much tweaking needed. And it just makes everything a lot smoother. And I feel like it also aids in the process of understanding what surfaces should be doing before we actually end up producing such products.
Well, and so like talking about the mindset of like that, it's now being changed in a way, right? Like now you spoke about the Bronco Sport, like not having any like physical modeling done, and Cedric, you're talking about like being able to jump into the same space, have some conversations, real-time conversations, maybe at the like very early sketch level, some conversations maybe with other people down that would happen normally down the line, that you can start having them earlier on in the process. How is all of this kind of like, isn't it kind of like just a crazy show going on right now? Because like people are like, wait a minute, I wasn't supposed to be part of this until like, you know, like a few months into the project. How are you dealing with all of these changes, which should be exciting for people, but also a little bit kind of like disruptive?
It's actually a really powerful thing, I think, is what we're finding. Things we used to not be able to get into programs because people would see it later on when it was purely physical to understand it. We're getting in early and we're able to make smart decisions on what should go in, shouldn't go in it. And I mean, there is a learning thing of gaining confidence. But again, like as you show them what you can do, like the presentations we do now, I mean, 4 years ago it was like gray and alias, and now it's a completely beautiful car that you step in, you step out of, you open doors, the screens are functioning, like everything magically happens just like real. And then we can validate that by milling it out or RPing parts or whatnot like that. So it's crazy because we're dealing with so many partners. Like you think of like a digital modeler, they model something. No, we're dealing with 2D design, we're dealing with engineering, we're dealing with brand, we're dealing with like human-centered design, digital design. We're dealing with like 7 different partners just to make a surface, and with these programs, we're able to show our surfaces at a really high fidelity way with shaders, and you feel like you're in the actual product rather than just evaluating surface. And that just makes decision making so much more robust with our senior leadership. So it's pretty cool that way. What do you think, Cedric?
I was going to just real quick. Sorry. I was just going to say that one of the things that we learned along the way with collaboration is we were, you know, it's very easy to understand why collab rooms in VR in Gravity Sketch make so much sense. What we didn't understand then that we know now is, you know, initially the push was, okay, well, we're going to get people who, you know, can work together globally as teams. And in reality, what we should have been striving for and what we're getting is a really robust distributed network, which is a different thing, right? When you understand that if we enable everybody with it, that they can make connections that we never would have envisioned, you know, and never planned for, except that the technology is now there to allow for it. I think that's truly magical.
That's a great point, Michael. Yeah. It is those new connections that we're making rather than just doing it the same way we used to always do it.
Yeah, and again, I think the value in that is going off of what Michael and Russell are saying, like some of this stuff that can pop up within the development pipeline are solutions to problems that, you know, we might have never came to resolving ourselves in the way that, you know, digital modeling, we stick with other digital modelers while designers stick with designers, where if we're able to have a space where we're able to kind of blend those two workflows together, you know, there's millions of ways of solving one problem in most cases, and just having mindsets from different, you know, design perspective backgrounds and whatnot can help lead to new solutions and even help streamlining and leading down to, you know, brand new processes that we would have never came to without having that opportunity of collaborating in such a way.
Yep.
And I'm quoting Cedric, and I put on a plaque on my wall his phrase, real-time design. I think that's super powerful to think of, right? Because yes, you aren't going to be able to do real-time design all the time, but when it matters the most, right? If the system is not there and ready and waiting for you, there's no way you'll get it. But this idea of ad hoc, pop-up, whatever you want to call it, this rapid response to solving problems directly benefits our customers, right? In a better product.
Yeah, kudos to Ford for opening the doors for this to happen. You know, it's not something easy to do. You know, people are so used on being in their part of the process that sometimes you would think that, you know, people would think that, you know, you're stepping on somebody else's toes. But, you know, at the end of the day, when you start to see the results, then you end up realizing that this is a good thing to start making those connections. But I wonder, how are these connections actually happening right now? Is it very, very kind of like free flowing, or is there now a way to get everyone to understand that this can now happen? You know, like it's a big mindset shift. So how are you dealing with all of that?
So, I mean, there's a lot of it with intention, right? So we have effectively an outreach from within 2000X and the Gravity Sketch team to seek out and queue up all the people that want to learn how to use Gravity Sketch and enable teams and onboard them. And then I would say some of it is, in an emergent fashion, like building off what Bill Mangan said in that video, right? You put something new in the process and you kind of want to watch what happens. And effectively, we're learning as we go. Each time we train a new team, right? It affects the curriculum that we start with, or we refine how we have that first conversation with the new team. I think it's, in some ways, again, getting the technology out there. I showed a graph one time about the normal project workflow, right? That says research and develop and then plan and implement and roll out and then test. In COVID, we said, look, we're going to get this out there and then pick up the pieces as they fell, right? And they kind of worked for us. And so we've been doing that since then, right? Biasing towards action. That's not just an internal phrase that we use at Ford. It is literally the way to go, right? Is to get it out there as fast as possible. And then we'll have things like this DTO, Design Technical Operations employee from Mexico who rang me up and said, hey, I got something I did in Gravity Sketch. Do you want to see it? And I'm like, oh, yeah. And completely floored us with a workflow that he kind of rolled by himself, right? Without any external sort of interactions. And now we have this amazing DTO connection started, right? And proven that it can help in the process in meaningful and different ways than before.
And something we have special here, I think, we have teams that get together and feed off each other so well. So you're like, how do you get everybody involved? Someone will find something new and then they'll share it, and everybody gets together and spreads this stuff so well. So it's it flourishes when something works or special or is a new process. And we have weekly meetings with my team where we show the new stuff people are working on, and we let people go off and develop things. And when we have those meetings, it sucks more people into it that then expands it, right? And then they suck people into that they've touched. And all of a sudden we have all these really powerful tools that doesn't happen in other places because maybe they're so rigid. They don't have this tight-knit atmosphere that we truly have here, which is, I think, really important. So that's a good way to get everybody involved and collaborate together, because other people see these things and they're like, oh, we can use it this way in our workflow, or we can collaborate more strongly with you. And it actually spreads really fast that way.
Yeah, one thing that I just wanted to mention this, this sort of, it's taken us 8 years to get to this point where we're at. And I do feel, speaking very bluntly, right, there's a lot of other companies, startups and others that can work really fast, and they seem really nimble and agile, and they may get to use the technology quicker, and that would be seen as a negative to Ford. But honestly, I think the road that we've been on and the fact that we're getting this implementation at a company as big as Ford will be a much bigger, more profound impact on the industry versus a startup who may not exist in a year's time or something. Right? That they run that higher risk of flying higher, closer to the sun potentially than Ford, who's chugging along, right?
Yeah. It always takes longer. Yeah. So it's bigger because you were there, just holding on. And so what's this, we spoke about like now everything that you're doing, all the like different ways in which you're giving people access to the tool. But it would be great to hear what is kind of like the process that you're envisioning. And I know it's still kind of like experimental and still kind of like you're still letting it, play its role, and then like figure out which parts are falling, and then like, grabbing them from the floor. But what's that vision that you have, Russell, with your team, that it's a team that is now kind of like enabling people to basically work more connected in 3D, which is something quite new, something that, like 3D has always been part of the process, but not in this kind of like very close-knit way. And so what's the thing that you're thinking about? Because I think it's quite unique, and people could actually get inspired from hearing a little bit more about it.
Boy, what did I say before? That was
Talk
so
about
good.
prototyping, right? I mean, I think the emphasis on prototyping and then the fail early, fail cheap
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Okay, I'll cover a couple of things based on what Mike's saying. One thing that's been super helpful. So our digital team, we've brought in people who went to design schools, but have really good knack for 3D. So stuff like Gravity Sketch has allowed people that have a good knack for 2D to come closer to that 3D world, and collaborate better. So as a design process, we're trying to capture the essence of the design as quickly as possible with all the parameters you need. So a lot of times we'll go, Gravity Sketch alias sub D, or Gravity Sketch Blender alias sub D, as we go from very sketch quick themes, getting the passion of the design out, till we get to something that meets a package, to something that we can industrialize. So we're using, Grasshopper. We're using all these programs to their strengths, whether Gravity Sketch is collaboration, Grasshopper is 3D patterns, Alias and Alias sub D, the industrialization part. So we're using them to their strengths in order to get to a final product quicker and more robustly. Part of that process is we can decide really early if something's working or it's not working. Some of that's testing interior functionality, like before a program literally even starts, like we'll be trying out new concepts that you've never seen in a car before and experiencing them and go, okay, good or bad, move on, right? Or even tons of different, sides of vehicles, or quickly moving through patterns. Like the sky's the limit when you can just slide a slider and make a whole new different pattern. And some of that stuff's cool because it's free to put a pattern in, but it can really affect somebody's sense of like quality and sophistication of a car and all those things. So, the process is the best tool for the job. Go through as many iterations, letting people work in programs and areas they're passionate in because they do their best work. Like these are like things that are super important to me. And then they can blossom in these different areas. Like if Cedric loves Gravity Sketch or I love Alias, we can blossom and have our own ability to make the design process better and make it our own and have our own ownership of it as it goes through and making it special. So I don't know if that was what we were talking about, but
yeah, 100%. It's like, and then you kind of like touched on it. Touch on something really important, because you mentioned all these different tools, which is important, right? Like the right tool for the right moment. And then different people kind of like using different tools. But, the important kind of like overarching thing is that everybody's speaking the same language, and it's 3D. And I think that's kind of like super powerful, because that's breaking a process that has been known in the industry for a really long time. And it can be scary. But from experience, and obviously you guys from experience on your side, you've seen that once you take that step, it's really hard to go back because you understand all the benefits. And so then what happens, and this is kind of like maybe my last question before we jumped on talking a little bit about like the teams and like people like Cedric jumping in and so on. Like we've spoken about the design process, right? Like, designs being made and so on. Like traditionally you have, like you do and go and do design, and then you end up having a presentation, you end up having a review session, and then more design gets done and so on. Now with this sort of workflow, and also with many more kind of like designs just coming out, because now it's easier, quicker, you have more robust designs coming out in less time. how is the review process, the presentation process, the decision making process? Because that's probably changing as well. You're not having something that you're creating something for a while and then you have a review process. Like many conversations are real time. So how is that changing?
So I can speak to it if you want.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So,
Go
well,
ahead,
I mean,
sorry.
strictly speaking from my perspective, a lot of the XR tools that we're getting into with Vario headsets and
Yeah.
I would say again to borrow Russell's phrase, right tool at the right time. We're certainly planning on taking advantage of pass through with Meta products and Gravity Sketch and being able to. We've already heard this from our teams, right, that have been onboarded. That was amazing to sit in a real car and see our interior concept digitally overlaid on this vehicle, and after a week's worth of design, it's already changing the way we review. This idea of we're moving into a new building here in Dearborn, and it's going to have a lot of plates, and they're going to be filled, and if they're not filled, there will be digital data there that you can thematically check out. All you need is the correct technology window to view it. I would say the thing that we'll enjoy as well is the sort of multiplication. I hate to use the phrase 10x, but the 10xing of themes is, usually if you had to wait for a clay, to check out maybe split theme. Now you got two different themes and you're checking out. We can have 20 themes, that you could flip through in a pass-through mode next to the vehicle that it's about to replace, and all in a short amount of time. With folks like Cedric, right? These sort of highly enabled with the designer's eye. I think that's the key thing, right? He's got the designer's eye, and he's able to to do this interpretation at a different level. And if we don't talk about, I want to come back to it, talk about AI, because that's sort of elephant in the room. But I would say it's already happening, right? The earlier stage evaluation of themes with pass-through and meta, to the later stage, higher quality or higher fidelity, whatever you want to call it, the shinier object in a Vario using XR. We already do this every day.
You brought up so many thoughts in my mind actually through that. So just a couple of interesting things like he brought up in my mind. So, typically when we view a new exterior, we view an interior in 3D physical stuff, it's very static. Well, it's shocking. Hopefully I'm not giving away any corporate secrets here, but it's shocking how much different a vehicle can look while it's driving past you rather than statically looking at something, and the end consumer's actual view of it. Like that's really interesting. You don't think about that. You walk up to a client, it sits there, you move around it. What if it's moving around you? You can do that in VR, right? What if you're sitting in the interior and you can maybe see this with some of our products like the Lincoln Nautilus, and you're like, what is the best way to see out of the vehicle and get information? Could I have 5 interiors stacked up and one's this high, one's this high, one's this high, and then I change the screens to get this better commutative experience? All that happened in VR. That wasn't physical, like, hey, this is just that all happened in VR with all functioning screens, like in that space. And how does that communicate with you? And how do you understand that? Like, that's super powerful stuff, right? So those are some massive changes. Another massive change is we had silos. We had a guy that sketches. We had a guy in another room that makes models. Then we had other people, the directors over here experiencing it in another room, and engineering over here in another room, right? So you're putting all these people into the same room, collaborating real time and hearing direct feedback, not hearsay, not anything else. But that connection is just so powerful, right? So those are massive industry changes from where we were to where we're going, and moving very quickly to where we're going, right? And seeing real products that have flourished from this technique, because we've been doing this for a while now. So yeah, that stuff I'm excited.
It's so amazing to see, like now starting to see like the products that now we can actually see and talk about, because you've been going through this process for such a long time. You're not new at this, and yeah, it would be great to dive even deeper to the Bronco sports, but maybe that will be another session one other day, because it would be great to hear a bit more about now the team, right? Like, what's that vision that you have for the team? How is it evolving? You know, Cedric joined you guys because of his like very advanced skills in like the new tools that are now being adopted by your teams. And so how are you thinking about all of this? Because obviously it's not easy or quick to learn so many tools, and you're probably gonna have to to look for the students that are coming out already kind of like fluent in them. And so what's that process? What's that thinking? What's the vision?
Oh, I'd actually really like to see what Cedric says about this without us planning, talking about this. But when you say learn the new tools, one thing we have great here, and it's part of Michael's team as well, is we have a strong like education type thing. So we have good resources. So Cedric might come in here as a Gravity Sketch expert, but we're going to teach him Alias, and he's going to be really well rounded really quickly. So like there's like, when I'm looking through resumes and I speak with these guys, I'm looking for some magical moment. And it's hard to explain because people keep asking me exactly what I'm looking for, but it's some sort of spark in their work that says this guy or woman is gonna make a difference. He's gonna change. I'm looking for people who change our perspective on how we're gonna do stuff. Like I know the future's catching us much faster than we even see. And their forward thinking, their ability to adapt, to shine in different mediums is really super important to what I look for. And we've been having amazing success. This year we were lucky enough, I think we brought 6 or 7 new people on, and they taught us a lot of stuff we didn't know. Like people came here with Blender skills and they realized, okay, to industrialize it needs to go to Alias, and like we didn't even really know how to do that until they kind of taught us, right? And like we're teaching them how to make something real, and it's this really cool relationship of we're all growing together. And I'd like to have Cedric say what he thinks, because he's been part of this, of the newest crop. This is probably the second time we've really brought in a group of people like this recently. But Cedric's one of the newest ones, but it's cool.
Yeah, going on what he's saying about Ford educating us when we get in with Alias. I think that can also translate pretty well when I'm jumping back into my more comfortable workflow with Gravity Sketch, in that a lot of stuff that I'm being taught here how to do in Alias at a higher fidelity to meet not only the standards set by the designers and design chiefs, but also standards by engineering. I can then take that, bring it back into Gravity Sketch, and try to figure out what's a medium between those two workflows, and how do I integrate that more with my Gravity Sketch workflow to kind of streamline and speed up the process of how we, develop our concepts. And and I can also go back into Alias again, where once I find out a smoother way of doing it in Gravity Sketch, it just makes it a whole lot easier when I end up having to transfer that data back into Alias when I am going in for more high fidelity refinements and tuning of said products. And it also plays into the whole idea of being able to collaborate in a more open way, becoming more knowledgeable of how Alias functions compared to how I usually do things in Gravity Sketch. It then helps me kind of rewire myself in thinking like, okay, so this is how we're supposed to be doing some of the design processes in order to make some of these concepts come to reality. How can I then reiterate that mindset into a designer's workflow so that we have a more cohesive transfer of data and transfer of ideas without having so much loss of translation, prior to such collaborative spaces. And it's going to what Michael was trying to highlight from my phrase earlier, real-time design, in that in order to have that kind of phenomenon happen, we're going to have to be able to adapt to all these new technologies and whatnot that do eventually, flow into each other, whether we see it happening now or not. At some point, they are going to converge at a certain stage, and the more that we can get knowledgeable in old ways of doing things as well as some of the new technologies that are being onboarded, the better we can streamline processes and the more we can create a more empathetical product for users that will be enjoying some of the stuff that we're creating for the future.
Oh, you can go.
Well, no, I was gonna rope Cedric back to like the original question. Like, how do you see us building the team? Like how has your onboarding / being brought into the group kind of been? I don't know if that's a fair question.
He's putting you on the spot.
I know, I'm totally putting him on the spot.
All right, let me see. Yeah, in terms of onboarding, I mean, seeing the other people that got hired alongside with me, we all came from different, knowledgeable backgrounds. Like some people were really diverse in Blender, I was diverse in Gravity, and some other people were diverse in Unreal and even Alias. And being that we were all pretty fresh from school, from what I'm aware of, from talking to them and interacting, we're not so ingrained on the traditional ways of doing certain things, or even the proper way of doing things sometimes. And because of all these different programs that we're more versed in, we're able to kind of, brush off of ideas of each other, like, hey, well, this is how I traditionally do it in this program. And then let's say another of the modelers, like myself or someone else, like, oh, maybe let me just try that in either Alias or the program that I'm comfortable with. And that's kind of how I see this new set of onboarding can evolve the workflows, because, trying to figure out how we can integrate those workflows into our own native or comfort programs that we like to revert back to, I think can help then streamline the process into more high fidelity stuff like Alias further down the line.
So some things, sorry, Mike, we'll get to you 1 second. Some things I liked him saying was diverse backgrounds, lots of ideas, following their own passions. How do we bring it all together? That's really what I've been driving for and trying to bring in. And right now, one of my modelers is doing this brand new branding experience, which is so far out of a typical realm, but what it's going to bring is huge, right? And he's just super excited about it. So we're like, go down that path, and it's just bringing these different mindsets together to make things better. Michael, I'll shut up now.
I was just going to build on what Cedric said about convergence, right? And he mentioned integration as well. I think in terms of where we are watching new tools and technologies come in, right? It's an extra question that we have to ask ourselves, right? This is interesting. Is it useful, and how well does it play with others? And I think integration is sort of a watchword for us now across a lot of different pieces of software on how they complement each other or how they compete. And I think when you really get to the heart of it, right, you always want a preference towards tools that are cooperative in the sense that they keep skills around that you need, not ones that leave you hanging. An example I've given in other presentations is a calculator and an abacus, right? They've demonstrated that if you learn how to do math on abacus, you'll retain far more math knowledge than if you just use a calculator, because if the calculator goes away, you've effectively lost your little portable brain for math. Whereas on abacus, you can develop a mental model that allows you to do math in your head. And so I would say Gravity Sketch is one of those, right? It has the same muscle motions as drawing. When you create in 3D and you stay in 3D, it sort of keeps you engaged in the craft of design. And I'll briefly mention a story about AI, right? One of the things with AI is I get asked all the time, is it coming from my job? And the answer is not yet, right? Or not right now. And essentially it's because there's this notion and a phrase called cognitive surplus. And it's really fascinating if you think about it. Right now, the best way to take advantage of an AI tool in the creative automotive sense, right, is to offload what you can to the AI, meaning take a sketch as far as you can go, and then when you want to offload some of that cognitive work, use the AI, and then use that time well, right? What you do with that surplus of time that it's just given you matters a lot, right? If you sit there and just keep mashing the generate key, I don't know if necessarily if that's the best use of it, right? And that's in the line of keep going, keep pushing. Don't be, sort of get an idea out of your head and then run with it. And to a certain extent, I would say the cognitive surplus phrase operates well as well in a tool like Gravity Sketch, where if you can get the idea out of your head and into a 3D model faster, guess what? You just saved yourself a ton of time. So now go figure out a way to use that. If it's sharing the concept with your boss so he can chew it up and spit you out, okay, right? That's or if it's starting another concept, or like we found with Cedric and Russell's crew, the multiplication factor of being able to have a designer fire off a sketch. Cedric takes it and starts rocking and rolling. Now the designer's gone back to the desk and started another sketch, right? There's a multiplication factor there that's really fascinating, which will totally be taken advantage of in the future.
Good. All right. I think we could keep going in this direction, but I really want to open up the floor for some questions from the audience, because they're like just nonstop commenting and asking questions. So I'll ask, and it's kind of like connected to what you just said, Michael, more or less. And it's the typical question that you're always going to get when you speak about Gravity Sketch or 3D, and it's this one: will traditional 2D sketching eventually be obsolete?
Nope, not a chance. Napkin sketches are very powerful.
Oh yeah,
believe it or not, and doing this is very powerful. It's a language of its own.
I would say, right, and language and communication, right? As long as ideas need to be communicated, there will likely be a napkin and a piece of and a pen waiting for that idea. And this is coming from a guy who fully believes in starting in 3D and I've done multiple concepts where there was no sketch work. So I guess I would play both sides of that coin. But the traditionalist in me says there's things that you can learn and need to learn, right? Fundamentals of design that will suit you well into the future with a 2D background.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like some of my personal favorite pieces that I've done in my portfolio started with just random doodles on a piece of paper. Whereas if I just started jumping in by just, traditionally just modeling it first and then just do like sketches over it after, great, I can still get like a pretty high fidelity, overall project with that process. But I feel like that emotional background to it, like, hey, doing something with a spontaneous sketch adds a little bit more of a, flair or flavor to like the design process that I personally like to keep around. And that's why I believe 2D sketching won't be obsolete anytime soon, in that it's kind of putting out your emotions and like special, inner flair onto paper before actually like thinking about all the physical aspects of how it should come together in a digital model or even a clay 3D printed model.
Yeah.
It's only when they develop the brain interface that I can put a hat on my head and it can read my thoughts. Will the 2D sketch go away?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody at MIT is already working on that.
Maybe one day. All right, next one. When you work in Gravity Sketch Collab, are all of you meeting about aesthetics, or do engineers come in too?
Buddy.
Yeah. Increasingly, we're getting more people at the table, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the programs I've been part of since coming here, like we initially start with, sometimes we get engineering data in there first, and then that's when we start IDing around. So yeah, it's like what Mike was saying, everyone gets pretty heavily involved nowadays, which in the end, it makes it a lot easier to kind of come to a conclusion as to where, what direction we want to head towards. Because not only do we have the feasible aspects of the process already in such an early stage, but we can also find some middle ground between the high conceptual stuff to what is actually physically possible to make.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, digital product design comes in there, marketing comes in there, like everybody you could think of comes in there, right, to collaborate. I mean, we build worlds that have our vehicles in there showing how we intend it to be used, like with cool nameplates like Raptor and Mustang and stuff like that, right? So it's a space where everybody comes in to say, how are we best going to leverage or use this product and functionality and everything.
And I would actually double down on that, right? Because of the effect of putting the headset on, you effectively become the customer. And so Russell spoke to this earlier about seeing the vehicle go around you, and building on what he said about building worlds, right? We've got teams that you go into one of their collab spaces and you're surprised to see way more than just a vehicle or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, right? They've got an entire vignette of a slice of life of this vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, you're not just thinking about aesthetics and engineering, you're thinking about, well, how does this vehicle fit in the world? How does it fit with our customers' lives? It's tremendous.
Experience.
Cool. Oh yeah, we have one last one, and that'll be it for us. What are the drawbacks of implementing new technology? Ending on a very negative note, but I think it's important to mention.
Here we go. I would say one of the drawbacks that I get a lot of times is time in the day to learn something new. And I think as an equation, right, you'd love to have a tool that you could learn. We were joking earlier about the matrix. Right? It would be fantastic to just be able to instantly learn new tools. It doesn't work like that because the matrix is just a movie. But, this idea that we bring a tool in and say, this is interesting, is it useful? How does it play with others, and how long is it going to take people to ramp up, right? And that is a value equation that we are constantly working through, and I think preferentially you would want to bias yourself towards tools that are easy to pick up and intuitive and that make sense, and increasingly in a digital era, right, that are again complementary, not competitive to what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, time is always a thing. And again, I'm going to talk to our culture a little bit. Having the correct people leader or management that can say, hey, Cedric, I know you're really busy, but go off on this tangent and learn and become better, because the next project, like, you're just it's going to be a multiplier. We Michael, myself, and other people have tried to grow that culture here and explain it to our upper leadership about how pausing for a moment to better the group is going to better everything. But that is always a challenge, and then getting everybody to buy in, and even like people who are very, very physical, especially for interiors, like you want to be able to touch everything, getting them to understand that digital has a lot of a way forward was a challenge, but we've made really good headway. So.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, it was so inspiring to hear. I mean, we don't get to hear this like in such a depth, and on how you guys are working and how you're like envisioning the future of the design workflow within Ford, and also how the culture has allowed this to happen, because I don't think that this would be happening without having that really amazing culture that you have within Ford. And I'm not saying this because you're here and like, you're Gravity Sketch customers. I'm truly genuinely saying it because we've experienced it over the years. So yeah, kudos for that once again.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.